What if the reason you feel unfulfilled isn't because you lack ambition, but because you're chasing goals that were never truly yours to begin with? Most people spend decades climbing ladders only to discover they were leaning against the wrong wall. And today I'm going to reveal a framework that solves this problem by helping you find the intersection of 4 critical elements that create unshakable purpose and deep satisfaction. But before I show you what those 4 elements are, you need to understand why almost everyone gets this wrong. See, we're taught that purpose is something you find through soul-searching or sudden epiphany, but research in psychology and neuroscience reveals something completely different. Purpose emerges from a specific alignment of practical factors. And once you understand this system, everything changes. I'm breaking this down into a 4-circle framework based on research from longevity studies in communities where people routinely live past 100 years while maintaining joy and energy throughout their entire lives. These aren't just happy accidents. Scientists have identified specific daily practices and mindset patterns that these communities share, and when you apply the same principles, you can engineer purpose into your own life regardless of where you're starting from. The first circle is about identifying what genuinely energizes you, not what you think should make you happy or what looks impressive to others, but what actually makes you lose track of time and feel fully alive. Research from flow state psychology shows that when people engage in activities that match this criteria, their brain releases specific neurochemicals that create sustainable motivation without requiring willpower. Think about moments in your life when you were so absorbed in something that hours felt like minutes. Maybe you were solving a complex problem, creating something with your hands, helping someone overcome a challenge, or learning about a topic that fascinated you. These aren't random experiences, they're data points revealing your natural inclinations. Now here's what most people get wrong: they confuse pleasure with passion. Pleasure is passive consumption that feels good in the moment but leaves you empty afterward, like scrolling social media or binge-watching shows. Passion is active engagement that might even feel challenging while you're doing it, but leaves you energized and fulfilled when you're done. Studies tracking people over 30-year periods found that those who built their lives around passive pleasure reported decreasing satisfaction over time, while those who pursued active engagement reported increasing satisfaction even as they aged. So the first step isn't asking what makes you happy, it's asking what makes you come alive, what challenges you in ways that feel meaningful rather than draining. But loving something isn't enough, which brings us to the second circle: what you're genuinely good at or have the potential to become excellent at with practice. Neuroscience research on skill acquisition reveals something fascinating about competence and fulfillment. When you develop mastery in an area, your brain builds dense neural networks that make complex tasks feel effortless, and this creates a deep sense of confidence and capability that spills into other areas of your life. But here's the critical distinction: you don't need to be naturally talented at something to become excellent at it, you just need the right combination of deliberate practice and genuine interest. Studies of world-class performers across every field from music to sports to business show that natural talent accounts for far less success than most people believe, while sustained practice driven by intrinsic interest accounts for far more. Think about skills you've developed over time where you went from awkward beginner to comfortable competence. Maybe it's a technical skill, a creative ability, a way of communicating, or a type of problem solving. Now ask yourself honestly, which of those skills aligned with what genuinely energized you from circle 1? Because when something energizes you and you're good at it, you enter a positive feedback loop where practice doesn't feel like work, improvement comes naturally, and your growing competence makes the activity even more enjoyable. But even if you love something and you're brilliant at it, that's still not enough for sustainable purpose, which is why we need the third circle: what the world actually needs from you. This is where a lot of people get uncomfortable because it requires shifting focus from internal feelings to external impact. But research on meaning and fulfillment consistently shows that humans are wired for contribution. Studies using brain imaging technology found that when people engage in activities that help others, their brains activate reward centers even more powerfully than when they receive rewards themselves. We're literally neurologically designed to find fulfillment through positive impact on others. Now, when I say what the world needs, I don't mean you have to solve global poverty or cure cancer. I mean identifying genuine problems, gaps, or opportunities where your unique combination of interests and abilities could make a measurable difference to specific people. Maybe it's helping small businesses navigate technology they find overwhelming, or creating educational content that makes complex topics accessible, or designing systems that save people time and frustration, or providing support that helps people through difficult transitions. The key is specificity. Vague notions of wanting to help people aren't enough. You need to identify concrete ways your skills address real challenges that real people are actually struggling with right now. And here's where it gets interesting, because when you nail the alignment between what energizes you, what you're good at, and what others need, you've created something valuable, but you still need the fourth circle to make it sustainable, which is what you can actually be paid for or receive resources to continue doing. This is where idealism crashes into economics, and a lot of people with purpose-driven goals get stuck. They find something meaningful but can't figure out how to make it financially viable, so they either abandon it and return to unfulfilling work, or they pursue it as a hobby while resentment builds over time. But research on successful purpose-driven careers reveals a crucial insight. The question isn't whether your purpose can generate income, it's whether you're creative and persistent enough to find or create the economic model that works. Consider this: every single product, service, or organization that exists today was created because someone identified the intersection between what they could provide and what others valued enough to exchange resources for. Some people find existing roles that match their purpose. Others create new positions within organizations by demonstrating value, and still others build their own platforms or businesses around what they uniquely offer. The key is understanding that economic viability isn't about compromising your purpose. It's about clearly articulating the value you create and finding the people or organizations who need that value enough to sustain you in providing it. Now let me pause here, because I know what some of you are thinking. This sounds great in theory, but how do you actually find this alignment in real life? And that's a valid question, because most people can identify one or two of these circles fairly easily, but finding where all four overlap feels impossible. So let me walk you through the exact process I've seen work across hundreds of different situations and personality types. Start by making this concrete through a simple mapping exercise. Take 4 sheets of paper or create 4 documents, one for each circle, and spend focused time on each one separately before you try to find the overlaps. For Circle 1, what energizes you? Write down every activity or type of engagement where you've experienced flow state, lost track of time, or felt genuinely alive. Don't filter these based on whether they seem practical or impressive. Just capture the raw data about what actually energizes you at a neurological level. Include both things you do regularly and things you've only experienced a few times but that stuck with you as unusually engaging. Then look for patterns. Are you energized by creating things, solving puzzles, connecting with people, organizing systems, learning new information, physical movement, aesthetic experiences? Most people's energy sources cluster around a few core themes, and identifying those themes is more useful than having a long random list. For Circle 2, what you're good at, list both hard skills you've developed through training or practice, and soft skills that come naturally to you or that others consistently recognize in you. This is where you need honest external feedback, because we're often blind to our own strengths. Ask people who know you well what they think you're genuinely good at, and pay attention to what tasks others find difficult but you find relatively easy. Include both current abilities and areas where you have strong potential based on early results or natural inclinations. Again, look for patterns. Do your strengths cluster around analytical thinking, creative expression, interpersonal connection, systematic organization, technical execution? For Circle 3, what the world needs, this requires shifting from internal reflection to external observation. What problems do you notice that frustrate you because they seem solvable but remain unsolved? What questions do people keep asking you for help with? What gaps do you see in your field, community, or areas you're familiar with where something valuable is missing? What changes do you wish existed that would make people's lives genuinely better? This circle requires the most research, because you need to validate that the needs you perceive are real needs that real people actually experience, not just problems you imagine might exist. Talk to people, observe pain points, identify where current solutions fall short. For Circle 4, economic viability, research who currently pays for solutions related to the needs you identified in Circle 3. What business models exist in adjacent spaces? Who has budget allocated for solving similar problems? What evidence exists that people value this type of solution enough to exchange resources for it? This doesn't mean you have to follow existing models exactly, but you need to understand the economic landscape and identify realistic paths to sustainability. Now here's where most people either give up or have a breakthrough. They look at their 4 circles and either see no overlap at all, or they see a tiny sliver where all 4 intersect. If you see no overlap, that's actually useful data telling you that you need to develop new skills, explore new areas of impact, or research different economic models. But if you see even a small overlap where all 4 circles touch, that's your starting point, and the strategy is to expand that overlap over time rather than waiting for perfect alignment before you begin. Let me give you a concrete example of how this works. Imagine someone who's energized by explaining complex topics in simple ways, who's developed strong communication and research skills, who notices that people in their field constantly struggle with understanding technical documentation, and who researches and discovers that companies regularly pay for training, content creation, and documentation improvement. That's a clear 4-circle alignment pointing toward roles or businesses in educational content, technical writing, training development, or explanatory media. But early on, the overlap might be small. Maybe they start by creating content as a side project while maintaining other income, or they transition into a role that's 60% aligned while building skills and credibility in the remaining 40%. The key is that they're moving toward the center rather than staying in work that touches none of their circles. And this is crucial. Research on career satisfaction shows that people don't need perfect alignment to experience fulfillment. They need sufficient alignment combined with a trajectory toward greater alignment over time. Someone who's 70% aligned with their purpose and moving toward 80% is significantly happier than someone who's 90% aligned but stagnant or declining. The direction matters as much as the current position. Now here's something I need to be honest with you about. When I first encountered this framework, I resisted it. I thought it was too simplistic, too neat, too optimistic about finding perfect alignment in a messy, complicated world. But then I started paying attention to people around me who seemed unusually fulfilled versus those who seemed perpetually dissatisfied despite external success, and I noticed a clear pattern. The fulfilled people weren't necessarily doing extraordinary things or making huge amounts of money, but they had clear alignment between what energized them, what they were good at, what impact they were making, and how they sustained themselves economically. And the dissatisfied people, even those with impressive titles and incomes, consistently had misalignment in at least one circle. Usually they were doing things that didn't genuinely energize them, or they were good at things they didn't care about, or they were pursuing paths that didn't create meaningful impact, or they were making money in ways that felt disconnected from what mattered to them. So let me make this even more practical with daily habits that strengthen each circle and move you toward greater alignment. For what energizes you, the practice is attention and experimentation. Pay deliberate attention to your energy levels during different activities and actively experiment with new experiences that might reveal hidden sources of engagement. Keep a simple log where you note what activities left you energized versus drained, and look for patterns weekly. Most people discover they have energy sources they've been ignoring because they didn't seem practical or important. For what you're good at, the practice is deliberate skill development focused on abilities that intersect with what energizes you. Studies on expertise show that just 20 focused minutes daily on skill development, done consistently over months, creates remarkable progress. Pick one skill at the intersection of your interests and practice it with full attention daily, tracking your progress to maintain motivation. For what the world needs, the practice is conversation and observation. Regularly talk to people about their challenges, frustrations, and unmet needs in areas you're interested in. Don't pitch solutions, just gather information about real problems real people face. This keeps you connected to external reality rather than living in your head about what you imagine people need. For economic viability, the practice is research in small experiments. Study how people successfully generate income in areas you're interested in, and run small low-risk experiments to test whether you can create value that others recognize as worth exchanging resources for. This might mean taking on one small project, creating sample work, or offering your developing skills in exchange for feedback and testimonials. Here's what ties this all together. These 4 circles aren't separate domains you optimize independently, They're interconnected elements that reinforce each other when properly aligned. When you're doing something that energizes you, you practice more naturally, which makes you better at it faster. When you're good at something, you create more impact, which makes it easier to generate income. When you're making meaningful impact and sustainable income, you feel more energized to continue. It's a positive feedback system that compounds over time, but only if you're intentional about maintaining alignment across all four circles instead of optimizing just one or two. Now, I want to hear from you. Which of these four circles do you have the most clarity about, and which one feels most confusing or uncertain right now? And more importantly, based on what we've covered, what's one specific action you're going to take this week to strengthen your weakest circle or explore potential overlaps? Drop your answer in the comments, because I'm genuinely curious how this framework lands differently for different people, and I'm replying to every single comment to help you think through your specific situation. Before we wrap up, I need to tell you about something I haven't mentioned yet. There's a fifth element that I deliberately left out of today's video because it's the most controversial part of this entire system. Some people believe this fifth element is actually more important than the other four combined, while others think it's completely unnecessary and just complicates the process. Next week, I'm diving deep into that fifth element and why I believe it's the hidden factor that determines whether someone finds temporary satisfaction or builds sustainable fulfillment that lasts decades. It challenges some assumptions we've made today, and it might change how you think about this entire framework. Before you go, I want to genuinely thank you for making it this far. The fact that you're still here, over 50 minutes into this video, tells me you're serious about finding real purpose rather than just consuming motivation content that makes you feel good temporarily but changes nothing. That level of commitment is rare, and it's exactly what's required to actually implement what we've covered today rather than just thinking about it. If this framework resonated with you, hit subscribe so you don't miss next week's video on that controversial fifth element. And if you found genuine value in what we covered, share this with one person in your life who's stuck or searching right now. Sometimes the most powerful gift you can give someone is a new framework for thinking about their situation. Until next week, stay curious, keep exploring those four circles, and remember that purpose isn't something you find in a moment of revelation. It's something you build through consistent small alignments between what energizes you, what you're capable of, what others need, and how you sustain yourself. Talk to you soon.